Malte Landwehr is our next speaker. He's a mighty talented SEO. I think many of you know him. He's so well known also as an influencer and speaker in SEO. For example, he founded a multinational agency, and he's one of my favorite speakers. I was working a lot with him in the past because he's having such a great variety of topics and humor for his sessions. At the moment, he is the head of SEO at Idealo, one of the biggest, largest price comparison sites in Europe. We worked together for, I'm not sure, 2.5 years. We did a lot of sessions together. It was so much fun, but also always a roller coaster to fix our communication and our goals together. But I think, I hope Malte agrees on that. It was always fun to work on that. I'm very happy to have you on the Searchmetrics stage again, Malte. Are you there?
I'm here, and thanks for having me.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. We have a little thing. Sometimes we will just ask, like, for example, Malte, this is a nice thing to kick off your session. Can you tell your favorite SEO joke?
Or the dumbest one?
Oof. Favorite SEO joke? I'm not sure if I know any SEO jokes, because SEO always just say it depends.
Which will be the no-brainer in this case. Okay, but if you're ready, I would like to introduce your session then and kick it off. Your session will be Cheese, Wine and Whistles, Manipulating Google for Fun and Profit with Elon Musk and Boris Johnson. I think this is one of the best titles of a session we ever had, and we are very curious. You have a little bit more time now, so please feel free to go through it very slow and explain additional stuff if you want to, and enjoy it. We see us afterwards for the Q&A.
All right. I will try to be slow. Feel free to interrupt me with questions or anything if I'm too fast. Yeah.
Thank you.
You already heard the title, Cheese, Wine and Whistles, Manipulating Google for Fun and Profit with Elon Musk and Boris Johnson. Okay, we don't need a second slide. So let's start with something very simple. We go to Google and we type in Facebook. Probably if you do it today, there could be something about layoffs. So these screenshots are a couple of days old. But when we type in Facebook whistle, there is Google Autocomplete or Google Suggest. The tag talks about whistleblower, Facebook whistleblower BBC, Facebook whistleblower 60 Minutes, interview, documents, etc., etc. And for the non-native speakers, a whistleblower is basically an insider who talked publicly about something negative that's going on at a company, most likely something illegal. And there was a Facebook whistleblower, and this person was on the show 60 Minutes, was on BBC. So all of these suggestions make sense, right? If somebody types Facebook whistle into Google, they probably want to learn about the whistleblower. Now, if we do the same for Tesla, only 2 of the suggestions from Google are negative. And this is weird because Tesla had a lot of whistleblowers, and Tesla is a company that basically under constant investigation from the SEC, the government agency in the US that cares about publicly listed companies and how they behave, how they communicate. And there is so much going on at Tesla, right? And Elon Musk is criticized in the media basically every day. So why, when I type Tesla whistle, is there so little about a whistleblower? Why is there stuff coming up about Tesla whistle sound and Tesla whistle price in India? How does it make sense? Well, I was confused, but actually it's very simple because Tesla produced a whistle. There is a Tesla Cyber whistle that looks a little bit like the Cybertruck, the pickup from Tesla. And it's a real whistle. You can order it in their online shop for a very high price for a whistle. And you can blow it and it makes a sound. And when Facebook released this whistle, it was actually with a tweet from Elon Musk making fun of whistleblowers. So most of the time when there will be a whistleblower story in the media contacts the company beforehand to ask for a statement. So Tesla was aware that there would be a whistleblower thing coming out. And what they did is they quickly built this whistle to drown the news of the whistleblower. And did it work? Well, of course. because if Elon Musk sends a tweet saying, let's make fun of whistleblowers and buy my whistle for $50, which is rather expensive for a whistle, of course, everybody's going to write about it, right? Like TechCrunch, many other news and media sites wrote about it. And then, of course, people searched about it, right? If you read in the newspaper that Tesla released a whistle, a significant amount of people is going to search for Tesla whistle. And basically what he did here is Elon, he made sure that a lot of content is created for the topic Tesla whistle. And he made sure that there's a lot of search demand for the Tesla whistle. And this is what Google is reacting to with both rankings and Google Suggest. That is why Google assumes, rightly, that the majority of people who type Tesla whistle into Google actually care about the whistle, not about the whistleblower. Different for Facebook. When you type Facebook whistle into Google, Google assumes you're looking for a Facebook whistleblower. This sounds very stupid, but it worked. And if it works, it's probably not stupid. So morally, we can find all of this very questionable. But if we just look at the effort they put into it, the outcome they generated, it worked, and they did it amazingly well. And this is not the only example. Some of you might remember this bus. I know Matt is hopefully on the call and remembers this bus very clearly. There was a bus driving around London and claiming that if the Brexit vote is happening in the UK, that then every week the UK will save £350 million that they are sending to the European Union, allegedly, and they can use it to fund their NHS, the National Health Service, and everything will be better. And this statement was, well, it was basically not true, not at all, because this money didn't exist, and money that doesn't exist, you cannot redistribute. And this bus was sometimes called the Brexit bus, and there's this person, Boris Johnson, who became prime minister, now is not prime minister anymore. And he was very much connected to this bus, and he was one of the people from the Leave campaign, so the pro-Brexit campaign, who actually, even when it was already in the media saying like these £350 million never existed, it was a mistake, when even the other people who were connected to this bus said, hey, sorry, we made a mistake, Boris Johnson was one of the people who was still running around saying it's the correct number and this is not a lie and this was true. So let's keep in mind that there's something negative about Boris Johnson and a big bus in London. There's a second bus in Boris Johnson's history, because once upon a time, he was the mayor of London. And in London, there's this very famous red bus with 2 stories, the Routemaster. And many years ago, it was time for a new bus. It was supposed to be called the Routemaster 2, and it was supposed to replace the existing buses, or some of them, in London. And Boris Johnson, against the recommendation of basically everybody, decided on a certain bus model. And it's a hybrid bus, so it takes gas, but also has the battery. And there was a lot of critique at the beginning, like the air condition is too wrong, it's not strong enough for the summer in London, and the company is not really equipped to service these buses for such a city. Boris Johnson said, no, I know better, we will have this bus, stop saying no, stop being negative. What happened? The bus turned out to be a disaster. So basically what happened is, as all the experts said, the air condition was too weak for the summer in London, and that was already 5 years ago, or more actually. So imagine what it's now with like the record heat that we had this year. And also the battery in many of these buses died. So they turned from hybrid buses into regular buses that have a very small gas tank and have to carry extra weight of a dead battery. So actually, from an environmental perspective, these half-working hybrid buses were worse than the buses that London had previously in many cases. So total disaster. And this bus got the nickname of the Boris bus. And so 2 negative things in the history of Boris Johnson. Now, if I type into Google Boris Johnson bus, the top results are painting, model, and hobby. The Brexit bus is on the bottom. The route master is not mentioned at all. There's some comment about a meme, but that's like a half negative thing, I would say, not completely negative. How can this be? How can somebody so royally twice in the topic of buses, but when you Google the name and bus, you do not find the negative things? Well, quite simple. He gave one of the smartest interviews ever. And you can see the interviewer on the left. I forgot his name, but he looks very confused, and that is for a reason. Because he asked Boris Johnson what he likes to do, and Boris Johnson said, I make buses. I make model buses out of wine crates. Let's remember the wine crate part, because we will come to that later. And he talked about buses. Yeah? And what happens if Boris Johnson says completely out of the blue that he's building model buses out of wooden wine crates? Everybody writes about it. The Guardian, the BBC, many other newspapers, everybody created content on Boris Johnson and model buses. What happens if millions of people around the world read about Boris Johnson building model buses? Of course, they go to Google, so it's the same effect again. A lot of content about Boris Johnson building model buses and a lot of searches for Boris Johnson building model buses. What does this tell to Google if there's search demand and there's content? It tells Google that this is what people want, so this is what the Google suggests are modeled after. And somebody did an analysis, and before this interview, 100% of page 1 results for Boris Johnson bus were negative. They were mentioning the route master in this case. And after this interview, only 20% of page 1 results were clearly negative. All the others were, let's say, confused by this model bus. And if you look at newspaper articles from that time, it's actually quite interesting. Like in June, the first articles about the topic talked about confusion, that it was like a weird and bizarre interview and what a weird hobby to have. And then a couple months later, somebody published an article saying, did Boris Johnson maybe not do something very stupid? Did he maybe on purpose talk about buses because he wanted to manipulate Google search results? And let's keep in mind that these buses were built out of wine crates. And let's come to the next Boris Johnson story. Many years ago, Boris Johnson had a fight with his girlfriend, so bad that the neighbors called the police because there was so much screaming going on, loud noises, they were concerned. And at the end, it turned out that this fight started because he spilled red wine on her sofa, and she basically told him, you are such a spoiled brat, you don't care that anything has value, yada yada. So they started shouting at each other, the police came. And you would think that if the police is called on the domestic, potential domestic abuse case, or at least like a loud altercation of a very famous politician, that this would be a big thing in the media, right? And of course it was at that time. But you would think that this must stick, like Boris Johnson in the content of wine, this story must be important. But if you search for Boris Johnson wine, you don't find anything about the sofa. You find something about party and parties. You find, again, the bus, because it's made out of wine crates or wine boxes. But you don't find anything about the sofa. We keep this in mind, because later there comes something more about wine. Let's talk about cheese. Why do I want to talk to you about cheese? Because Boris Johnson gave another bizarre interview a while ago. He said, don't work from home, the cheese will distract you. Did you hear me right? Yes, you did hear me right. He said, the cheese will distract you. The cheese. If you are against the home office, you could say your kids will distract you. Your cat will distract you. Your dishwasher will distract you. The dirty dishes will distract you. There's a million things that can distract you in the home office. But the cheese? Really? Like, why? How does it make sense? Well, first of all, let's check the reaction when he said it. Of course, it happened what always happened around the world. people wrote about Boris Johnson talking about how cheese is distracting you in the home office, which again is a totally random thing, makes 0 sense. So everybody writes about it, everybody searched for it. Well, if we remember the time of the Corona lockdowns, which partially were very strong in the UK, like very strict, there was a picture coming out where Boris Johnson and other politicians are sitting together, I think in the backyard of Downing Street, and are enjoying cheese and wine. And some people in the media called this a party. They said while we have to sit at home, our politicians are having a party. And then Boris Johnson said, no, this wasn't a party. This was a meeting that was running late into the night, and it was a meeting with some cheese and some wine. It's not a party. It's totally not a party. Even though we are looking like we are enjoying ourselves, we are working hard, just having some wine and cheese. So both wine and cheese, again, in a negative context with Boris Johnson. Now, if we tie all of this together, and I think I wasn't as slow as I was supposed to be, so I hope there will be some questions in the end. Who is the best SEO here? I mean, maybe one of you who's listening right now is on position 3, but very obviously number 2 here is Elon Musk, and number 1 is Boris Johnson, because as I said, morally this is highly questionable. But if you just look at the idea and the execution, they did an amazing job manipulating Google. Much better than almost any SEO has manipulated Google ever. So yeah, this is the story that I wanted to share with you. And now, as I said, I hope there are maybe some questions.
Not in the chat so far, but if you would like to ask questions about that, please put them in now. I just can see nice feedback and people laughing. Very funny and interesting strategy. And also, like, it's a nice way, like I've introduced you, like it's a nice way to share knowledge in that way. The first question, maybe that's something you can answer, Malte, is how can I profit from this knowledge? Because I'm pretty sure you want to say something with that kind of presentation and using those examples.
Yeah, I mean, of course, most of us don't have the ability to say or tweet something and then have thousands of journalists write about it and millions of people search for it. This is reserved to celebrities and influencers. But I mean, the important part here is to understand the principle that Google Suggest or Google Autocomplete is triggered by content that is being published, and especially the velocity of this content. So a lot of new content on a topic can influence Google Suggest, and what people are searching for. So if everybody is searching for iPhone price comparison, then probably the first Google Suggest for iPhone will be iPhone price comparison. If everybody is searching for Samsung Galaxy explodes on the plane, the first suggest for Samsung Galaxy will be explodes on the plane. And there are ways how SEOs can influence this, right? You can think about a TV campaign or podcast advertising or radio advertising, like something that would trigger people to search for something. But large-scale Google Suggest manipulation is, of course, incredibly hard. In the past, it was quite easy to cheat, actually, and a lot of people did it. But those times are over. So sit together with your PR, brand marketing colleagues and talk about, is it something you should do? And is it something that you want to do?
Okay, cool. I think there are 2 questions which I would like to add to your answer, because it's like mainly following that. The first one, and I will ask both at the same time because the first one is a little bit easier. Did you ever use this technique yourself? And the other question is, very interesting strategy, but does this only work if you already have a large following with millions of users and press coverage? What do you think about that, Malte? Is this important? And did you do it by yourself? And if so, just feel free to share what kind of strategy did you try?
I would never do anything to manipulate Google. My approach to SEO is to do things that are good for people and then show to Google that you're doing these things. I am aware that in the past, people did this. The something that worked very well was when Amazon has this basically marketplace for cheap labor called Mechanical Turk, where you could tell people like, go to Google, search this term, don't click on anything, or maybe even click on something. I know that there are some agencies that in the past used this to manipulate Google Suggest. Also, like 10 years ago, Google didn't really have didn't check the geographical location. So you could pay 10,000 people in India or Bangladesh to search for these terms. You didn't have to do it from German IP addresses to manipulate Google Suggest in Germany. But many of these things now don't work properly anymore. I know there are still people who have access to real people who have Google accounts, have a real search history, who have cookies, who are behaving normally because there are normal people using the devices. But I don't think they want to publicly go into too much detail what is possible there. And then the second question, if it's like how to use it, or who can use it rather. I mean, as I said, like if you have a large following, this is probably very easy for you to do. Like if I now told everybody to please search on Google for, I don't know, Malte Searchmetrics Summit. Maybe if a few hundred people now did it, maybe then Malte Searchmetrics Summit will become the #1 suggest for Malte. Probably should be Malte Landwehr.
Of course, so.
Yeah, let's do Malte Landwehr Searchmetrics Summit. That might be easier to manipulate than Malte Searchmetrics Summit. So yes, please do it. Go to Google and search for Malte Landwehr Searchmetrics Summit. Then we can maybe see if it works.
That's a very good idea. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and then as I said, you can use paid media, right? You can use out-of-home advertising, TV advertising, radio advertising, podcast advertising to put up a slogan that people would search for. Or you can work with a PR agency. If you have a real story, you can get that published and you can people to write about. Of course, it has to be something that people will actually search for. Like nobody will search for your press release that you, I don't know, release a new feature in your software or something. That's not what people search for. But if you have either a very positive sounding story or a scandal, if that fits your branding, you can trigger search behavior and content publishing.
That's very cool. Thank you very much, Malte. If you don't mind, I would like to ask a few more questions. Firstly, we have still time and we still have questions. So if you would like some answers,
keep them coming.
I will start. Okay. So we do have the next one. Maybe just a little feedback in between. No questions from me, but that was entertaining. And now I lost the thread. And thought-provoking, which is a very good feedback, I think.
Thank you.
There's another question. I think this illustrated a kind of top-down approach. How would you flip the script on that for a bottom-up approach?
Not sure I get the question because, I mean, this is really the only way to do it, right? Like either you do it with an actual natural story or artificial story that you can bring into the organic news cycle. Or you can manipulate technically, which is like very, very hard to manipulate with automation nowadays. So I'm not sure I get the question fully. I mean, maybe the person can re-ask it.
Yeah, Tobias is very active and maybe you can rewrite your question. Maybe it's, maybe it's a little bit the same. Just the thought, like without having millions of followers, how it's possible to set something up like a strategy like this. The next question would be, same. How could this work without being famous? But let's ignore that one. How do you think the chat is always getting forward and I lose the questions again. What do you think this tells us about Google's algorithm? For example, the importance of news links and semantic search, etc. This is maybe interesting because like this affects also our daily environment.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about these cases is that actually it's not manipulation of Google algorithms, it's manipulation of the news media and search behavior. And I think that the Google algorithms actually work perfectly well in this case, because the majority of people who search for Tesla whistle, they actually care about whistle. And I think it shows that nowadays, if you want to manipulate Google, maybe don't try to manipulate Google, maybe try to manipulate the data that Google is working with. Because if you can influence what people type into Google, and if you can influence what content people publish, you're technically not manipulating Google, right? Like you're manipulating the world around Google, and in that world, the Google algorithms are functioning very well. And I think the better Google algorithms are becoming at filtering out any kind of SEO manipulation, the better or the more important it will be as an SEO that you manipulate the world around Google instead of manipulating Google.
Okay, so thank you for that. Also, always there's a lot of good feedback for you. I would definitely recommend to have a look into the chat, Malte, after the session. There's another question. Maybe we will end with this one, but maybe you can tell a little bit more about your strategy at the moment. Which priority does SEO have at Idealo compared to other channels? For example, pay TV and so on. Can you maybe give a little bit of an outlook or some insights about what your strategies are at the moment at Idealo, as it's this huge platform?
Yeah, as I said, our SEO strategy is to do things that are good for users and make sure Google sees that. We are not doing any kind of advanced SEO trickery. We are not using any kind of AI content, no link wheels or anything like that. Our SEO approach is really just building a good product and making sure Google can see the good landing pages that our product and engineering teams are building, and making sure Google can crawl all the content and index all the content that our content team is producing. I have no fancy SEO advice to give or fancy strategy to share.
But is this something like, as the person is asking for, like a comparison to paid TV and so on and so forth? Can you maybe tell us, like, how do you work together with those other teams? As Idealo is very famous, of course, you have like ads in TV and everywhere else. Is this something you catch up together? You have meetings, or like maybe not too much information, of course, but maybe just give a little bit of insights about what you're doing and how you work together with those teams, because like this is something many of those talks are talking about today, is like, how's the communication between teams and how can we communicate that SEO and search data is important for a whole company instead of just being this single mini team somewhere?
I mean, of course, there's communication between marketing teams, and I would encourage that. But at the end of the day, there's a reason why there are channels and specialists in channels. And I think it totally depends on the company, the maturity of each channel, how much collaboration is happening. And I don't think it's helpful if I share some very specialized snapshot now from how we do things at Idealo. Sorry to disappoint there on that question.
No, of course. That's what I meant. Like, I just like to see if it's really used like we are talking about, like in different talks today, like really work closer together and make sure SEO is heard and is, always not just a business to have. It's always like also, I'm looking forward, I don't know, like geschätzt. Valued, exactly. Thank you, Hattie. I would like to end this session normally, but I can see, as we are very, very early, I can see Jordan is not online yet, which is
5 minutes break.
5 minutes. And I'm not sure if we would like to do a little break.
If it's helpful, I can cover 1 more minute by telling my most interesting Google suggest manipulation story.
Please,
Of course.
So there was a
Let's
brand
do
in
that.
America quite a while ago. And when you typed their name into Google, it said scam as the first suggest. And they never had any kind of scam. They were a legitimate business. There was not a single review that said that they were scam. And of course, since it was the first suggest, everybody clicked on it, right? Because if I Google a company and it says scam, that's what I'm going to click on, right? I want to know. And at the end, it turns out the trigger was that they had all their job listings on a job website where it had the company name with the logo, and directly below the logo, there was a button, report scam. And this word was on so many pages, so close to their logo and their company name and the link to the website, was enough for Google to make a connection between the word scam and this company and to try it out as a Google suggest. And then everybody clicked on it. And at the end, what they did is they stopped publishing their job offers on this site, and the Google suggest disappeared. So the content is really important in triggering the Google suggest. It's not just search volume. That's it for me for today.
Thank you.